Yo, what's good? What's going on? JB here, back with another CyberInsight live stream. We're hopping into day 5 of TryHackMe's Advent of Cyber. So let's just jump into this room here, and we'll just get at it. For this particular one, you're going to need to do a few different things. You're going to need to start up the machine that's under task 10, and then we're also going to be using the attack box, which normally would be a button up here that you need to hit to start that up, and that should pop it up in another browser, and it will end up looking like that. So if you want to do that ahead of time while we start walking through this stuff, that'll get us set up. So let's see what we're doing today. Elf McSkitty asked Elf Recon McRed to search for any backdoor that the Betty Yandit APT might have installed. If any such backdoors found, we would learn that the bad guys might be using it to access systems on Santa's network. So what are we talking about in this task today? We're going to be talking a little bit about remote access services, some of the different types and what we use those for. We're going to look at recognizing a listening port for those remote access services, using a tool to find the password for those services. So we're going to be using a tool to brute force the password and account for that. And then connecting to that server over one of these remote access services and seeing what we see once we get there. So remote access services, what is that? Well, so they say here you can easily control your computer system using the attached keyboard and mouse when you're at your computer. But what do we have to do if we want to connect to something that doesn't exist where we're sitting in our home office or anything like that? Maybe it's a computer that's somewhere else in a different state or somewhere else around the world. Well, remote access services are different protocols that allow us to connect to these remote devices and be able to interact with them as if we were sitting at a keyboard and monitor right in front of where those remote devices are. So there's a few different ones that they mention here within this room: SSH, RDP, and VNC. SSH stands for Secure Shell. If you do any type of admin work within an IT environment, you're probably familiar with some of these. SSH we normally see associated with TCP port 22. It was initially used for Unix-like systems for remote login. It uses what's referred to as the command line interface, or CLI. So we aren't interacting with it as though it was a graphical user interface. It's all just typing commands out. It mentions that it started off for Unix, but really we can see it for most types of hardware appliances. Allow some type of SSH connection to access the CLI for those different devices. RDP, on the other hand, is something, if you've worked in a Windows environment, then you're probably pretty familiar with that. So it's a remote desktop protocol. It offers up a graphical user interface that allows us to access and manage Microsoft Windows systems. The thing with RDP, and I guess I should mention this with SSH, in both cases, these are encrypted connections, which is good because we are passing passwords back and forth. RDP uses TCP port 3389. Another remote access service, which they aren't going to cover here because it's no bueno, it's pretty bad, is Telnet. And Telnet pretty much does the same thing as SSH, but the difference is that the credentials are passed in plain text. So if someone were able to capture your traffic being sent across the network and you were using Telnet, someone would be able to get your username and password. The last one that they mention here is VNC, or Virtual Network Computing. It provides access to a GUI just like remote desktop, and optionally allows control of the mouse and keyboard. VNC is available for any system with a graphical interface, so we're talking Windows, Linux, Mac OS, a whole bunch of other stuff. Based on what you have in your environment, you're going to end up choosing one of these. Something else that oftentimes we see with different types of hardware appliances, so maybe networking devices and security devices, is a lot of times they'll also have a SSL or HTTPS option for remote access as well. So when it comes to authentication, we're talking about the process by which we validate our identity when we go to access a device. And we're doing this both locally and also when we're using any of these remote access services. So the process starts with the user claiming a specific unique identity, such as a particular username, and then normally tries to have to prove that identity. And there's a few different ways we can do that. something you know, something you have, something you are. The one that most of us use or very familiar with is passwords, right? So passwords is something that you know, could be a PIN number as well. Something that you have could be some type of hardware token. So maybe it's like a something that's used for multi-factor authentication. Also could be some type of cryptographic key. And then something that you are refers to different types of biometric authentication. So if you use your iPhone and you allow it to scan your face to be able to log into that, then that's something that you are, and that's using some form of biometric authentication. So back to remote access services, we usually use a password or private key files for authentication, using a password as a default method for authentication and requires the least amount of setup. Unfortunately, passwords are prone to a whole bunch of different types of attacks because we can use, as you're going to see, software that is able to iterate through what we call lists or dictionary files and just try to guess whatever the password is. Obviously, us as individuals trying to guess would have a hard time, but if you have a piece of software that's running a script, it can automate the generation of all of these different types of attempts and can be pretty successful with it, which is one of the reasons why when we talk about password security, we're always talking about using a length of password that's much more, longer than the standard 8 characters or 12 characters, whatever. I think at this point, we're saying it should be anything over 14 characters. Really, the best thing you can do, though, is couple that up with some multi-factor authentication. So let's see, what do they mention here about attacking passwords? I see a whole bunch of people dropping in and leaving comments. I'll throw those up here in a little bit, but definitely appreciate everybody checking out the stream. So attacking passwords. Passwords are the most commonly used authentication methods. And as I just said, it's open to a whole bunch of different types of attacks. Some attacks don't require technical skills, such as shoulder surfing or password guessing, and others use automated tools. So some of these you might have heard of before. So shoulder surfing is if you can be around somebody who's typing in their password and you're able to see what they're doing, then that's a very easy way to end up getting credentials. So you always want to be careful. The example that they give here is like your PIN code at the ATM if somebody sees you doing that. Password guessing kind of is another step, I would say, up above that. That's where we're talking about using personal details about the person that you're trying to guess the password for. So if you're able to get some information, maybe birth date, place of birth, favorite sports teams, children's names, things like that, then you have, at least a starting point to be able to try to guess the passwords that a person might use based off of that information. Which again is why when you're creating a password, it's pretty good to use something that's not necessarily as simple as that. So passphrase or something that's also mixed with different types of characters, uppercase, lowercase, number, special characters. Dictionary attack would be kind of the next step here. And this approach expands on password guessing and attempts to include all valid words that are in a dictionary or word list. So you can feed this into a tool set, and it's just going to iterate through all of the different words that you have in that list. This is good, and we're going to see this here shortly. The problem with that is obviously the word list can become super, super big. And to iterate your way through all of that, that can take quite a bit of time. The last one I mentioned is brute force attack, and this is the most exhaustive and time-consuming out of everything, and that's where attacker tries all possible character combinations. So it doesn't even need to be real words. It's just combinations of uppercase, lowercase, special characters, numbers. But here we're talking about they want to focus on dictionary attacks. There's different lists that have been compiled from different data breaches. One example is the RockUse list of breached passwords. That's actually on the attack box that we're going to be using, and that's going to be the dictionary list that we're going to be using with the tool set when we try to crack the password and get access for this remote access service. The choice of words list depends upon the knowledge of the target. So obviously, if a person is an English speaker, then you're probably going to do one that's associated with English words. If not, then you might want to use something that's more tailored specifically to that individual. So the RockU's word list contains more than 14 million unique passwords. As I mentioned, it can take a long time to go through these password lists. So doing it in a way that's, not you just sitting down with this password list trying to go through is why we end up using different types of automated tool sets. I think the one that we're going to be using here in this room today is Hydra. Let's see what else they mentioned here. So hacking authentication service. So we're going to start the attack box, which I've already done. On the attack box, we're going to open a terminal and use Nmap to scan the target machine of this IP. This is going to auto-populate with whatever your actual IP address is within the lab that you're doing. So that's kind of helpful that they do that. So if you remember, we did Nmap yesterday. So we're just going to do TCP scan here. So Nmap and then dash lowercase uppercase s, and then the IP address. So we can just go ahead and pop that in over here. And it was 1010, 150, 180 for me. Yours is going to be different. 150, 180. And we're going to see what ports come up. This shouldn't take too long. Again, if we were doing some other things, we could look for vulnerabilities if there were other services that came up. But we're not necessarily really focused on that in this lab today. But we see that they have SSH and VNC. So there's two different services that are open on this box. So we want an automated way to try the common passwords or entries for word list. And that's where we're going to use Hydra. So we're going to kind of go over the syntax for Hydra here. So it's Hydra -L, whatever username you want to use, then -P for the word list, and then the IP address of what you're connected to, and then the service that you're connecting to. So some examples that they give here. So if we were going to use the username Mark, and then the word list of the RockU text, and they also show here that instead of putting the IP and then SSH, you could just go SSH : and the IP address. All those work. They give you a few different protocol differences and options. So we could do RDP, VNC, FTP, POP3. And then they have a few different options here. For verbose is going to show you all the username and password combinations. It's kind of cool to see that as it iterates through that. Something else we should do. Always good if you aren't familiar with the tool, you can always look at the man page for it. Let's see if we can kind of go down through here. Now I noticed with me right now, this is not super responsive as far as the CLI. So just be aware of that. They probably have a whole bunch of people that are trying to run these labs all at the same time. And so that can be a little bit difficult. So we see a few different flags that we can use here. Restore previous session, connect via SSL. If you want to use a different port, then you can do the -s. We already talked about the login and the password. That's a good point someone just mentioned in the chat, is that you can look at this if you wanted to online. The man page is going to be pretty much the same thing if you don't want to actually do it through the CLI. And I apologize that this is taking a little bit to scroll down through here. I just want to see if there's anything else of kind of interest. I know that there's some speed options that we can do. To try to speed it up when we're doing the actual scan, just like there is in Nmap. So something else that's worth noticing here is this -F. It exits after the first found login and password pair. So sometimes if you don't do that and your word list is really long, you could be sitting there waiting for a super long time. So we can just go, yeah, either of those Fs I think is probably something that we'll end up using. But let's get out of that. We can stop that. And we can go back and see what we have going on here. Okay, so they have this command here for Hydra, so we're going to give this a try. So it's going to be using the username Alexander, the RockU password, SSH with verbose turned on, so we should be able to see all the username and passwords that are going through here. I'm just going to exit out of this because that's close the terminal. Yep. And we'll open this back up again, and I will make this a little bit bigger for everybody. Let's see. That should be good. And let's copy this over. And we could go and take a look at what they have for word lists too here in a second after this goes through. So it's doing its thing. We'll see what this takes. I should have hit the dash T4 with that to kind of speed this up a little bit, but we'll see. In the picture that they showed here, it came up pretty quick, I think. I think it came up, yeah, like 116, so shouldn't take too long. And then I think after that, okay, here we go. Yep, so it was able to find for the host, the login, and the password that did work. So if we wanted to connect via SSH, we could take this login and password and do that. But I don't think that's what the room has us doing. I think it has us going and trying to do the VNC stuff down here. Use Hydra to find the VNC password for this target, right? So we're going to do a different type of scan, but that's all right. And just if we did want to see share word lists, and we're just seeing what's in this file here. So they got a few different ones that are normally loaded on these attack boxes. But yeah, we're using the RockU one. Okay. So let's run this again, but for VNC. Now the thing with VNC is you actually don't need a username. And I also mentioned we were gonna do the first, use that flag for the first. So as soon as it finds it, it will turn it off, and we'll go T4 to kind of do multiple things in parallel here that will hopefully speed that up a little bit. So let's go back here. The only thing we need to get rid of is Alexander and that dash L. Okay, now we should be able to do that. Let's see, what did I do? Oh, I should have kept the L, but just left it blank. Okay, let's go dash L. Let's see if that works. No. Oh, yeah. I see what I'm doing. I mentioned I was going to change it to VNC, and I didn't change it. So we're going to go here. Just go VNC. Now I bet you I don't need that L there. Let's see if this works. That looks better. Okay. And now it's going to attempt going through all this stuff. We're going to see how long it takes. Hopefully not too long. I'll let that spin for a second. And we can go and see what else we needed to do over here. So they're showing how to connect to VNC. They got a tool in here called Ramina. Just open it up. It's going to pop up an error message. We just hit cancel. Then we put in the IP address we want to go to. And then I assume it's going to prompt us for our password. So that's cool. So we're looking to get the password, which is what we're doing with Hydra right now. And then once we have that, then we're going to connect using a VNC client to here. And then I assume there's going to be a flag written when we log in there. So there are a few other different ways to go about cracking passwords for different services. We were talking about Nmap yesterday. Nmap has a whole bunch of different scripts that you can use as well. Some people like sticking within Nmap and using what they have, but it's good to know different tool sets. So while this is going, I can go ahead and throw up some of the comments here while we wait. Let's see. Will anyone ever do a comprehensive CLI system hardening tutorial? CLI for which system though? Because I mean, like, you do a comprehensive hardening tutorial, but of what type of system are we hardening? Is now global. Yeah, appreciate all the comments and appreciate you dropping in today. Hey. Oh, you see that popped up? This is a good comment here. So there is also somewhere you are or something you do. So somewhere you are is going to be tied to like GPS or IP, and something you do, I'm not sure what that could be. Because that kind of, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. But yeah, there definitely are different ways that you can look at providing different factors for authentication. All right, so this looks like this ended up popping back up. So now we have a password that we can use. So let's grab that and open up Ramina. There's internet. And we're going to cancel that error. I'm going to drop the IP address 10.10.150.180. Okay, and let's drop this password in here. Boom. And we were able to connect with the password that we brute force with that dictionary list. And it looks like maybe they have defaced this in some way. It looks like some Bitcoin shenanigans going on here. So maybe we got some ransomware going on. I'm trying to move this down because I'm sure there's a flag here somewhere. There we go. Okay. And the flag is THM, I see your screen. All right, let's go back and drop this in here. Oh, let's actually, yeah, I'll do this. THM, see your screen. Okay, and then that password was, we can close out of that. Yes. $1Q2W3E4R. So a nice little pattern password. All right. So that is it for today. We talked a little bit about remote access services, different types of authentication, ways that we go about attacking passwords, hacking authentication services. So we used Nmap a little bit to get some information on the box that we were looking at, and then used Hydra with a word list. We looked at doing that both with SSH and VNC, and then we were able to take the credentials that we were able to crack and then connect to the VNC server. So yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody dropping in. And thanks for all the comments. Yeah, go get at it, and I'll be back tomorrow and do day 6. All right. Take care.